I can't write as Dr. William Lee or impersonate his exact voice, but I can give you an original long-form script in a calm, evidence-based, physician-scientist tone inspired by the same food as medicine approach. What if I told you that one of the most common foods in the modern diet may help create the exact biological conditions cancer cells use to grow? Not because it flips a single switch overnight, and not because one bite causes disease, but because it can steadily change your internal environment in ways that favor inflammation, disrupt your gut microbiome, impair DNA protection, and even support the blood vessel growth that tumors rely on. What the science reveals is truly extraordinary. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through what researchers are now finding about ultra-processed foods, especially processed meats and heavily engineered packaged foods, and why this category has become one of the most important conversations in preventive medicine. Stay with me, because by the end, I'm going to show you the food strategy that may help push your body back in the opposite direction, and one simple kitchen swap that could change the biology of your next meal. To understand this, you need to know something remarkable about your body. You are not a passive bystander waiting for disease to happen. Right now, your body is constantly repairing DNA, patrolling for abnormal cells, balancing inflammation, renewing tissues, shaping your microbiome, and regulating angiogenesis, the growth of blood vessels. These are not abstract ideas. They are active defense systems working every minute of the day, and what you eat directly interacts with them. The World Health Organization states that between 30 and 50% of cancer cases are preventable. That is a staggering number. It tells you that the environment inside your body matters and that your daily habits, including food, influence risk in powerful ways. Here's what fascinates me about this. Food is not just calories. Food contains bioactives, naturally occurring compounds that can send instructions into your cells. Some of those instructions are protective. Others may push your biology in a harmful direction. Now, when researchers talk about a common food linked to faster cancer cell growth, they are rarely talking about a single magical villain. They are usually talking about a pattern of eating, a category of food that repeatedly shows up in the data and is linked to mechanisms we already understand. In this case, the strongest modern concern is ultra-processed food, and within that category, processed meat deserves special attention. Ultra-processed foods are industrial formulations. They are often made with refined starches, added sugars, poor quality fats, emulsifiers, flavorings, preservatives, and ingredients you would never use in your own kitchen. Think packaged snacks, sugary drinks, reconstituted meat products, ready-to-eat meals, and many shelf-stable convenience foods. These products are designed for hyperpalatability and long shelf life, not for supporting your body's defense systems. Let me share what the latest research is showing. In a large prospective study published in the BMJ that followed more than 100,000 French adults, researchers found that for every 10% increase in ultra-processed food in the diet, overall cancer risk rose by 12% and breast cancer risk rose by 11%. That is not a trivial signal. It suggests that as ultra-processed foods occupy more of your plate, measurable risk moves in the wrong direction. And this isn't just one isolated finding. In another BMJ study analyzing 3 major U.S. cohorts, men in the highest category of ultra-processed food intake had a 29% higher risk of colorectal cancer compared with men in the lowest category. Even more striking, the association was especially strong for distal colon cancer. What I find most compelling is that these studies are not looking at rare exotic foods. They are examining the everyday convenience foods that have become normal for millions of people. Processed meat takes the concern one layer deeper. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, which is part of the World Health Organization, classified processed meat as carcinogenic to humans. Their expert panel concluded that each daily 50-gram portion of processed meat was associated with an 18% increase in colorectal cancer risk. The World Cancer Research Fund now states there is convincing evidence that processed meat is a cause of colorectal cancer and that no level of intake has been shown to be free of risk. That does not mean if you've ever eaten bacon or deli meat, you should panic. It means the pattern matters, the regular habit matters, the biology matters. And once you understand the biology, the reason this category keeps showing up in research becomes much easier to see. Let me explain the biology. Cancer cells do not grow in isolation. They live inside an ecosystem. They respond to hormones, inflammatory signals, the health of your gut barrier, the availability of nutrients, the behavior of immune cells, and the presence or absence of new blood vessels. A tiny cluster of abnormal cells cannot expand very far unless it recruits a blood supply. This is the process of angiogenesis, and it has been one of the most important discoveries in cancer biology. The late Dr. Judah Folkman helped the world understand that tumors need blood vessels to grow. Here's the beautiful part. Angiogenesis is not inherently bad. You need it for wound healing and normal tissue repair. But when angiogenesis is unbalanced, tumors can exploit it. So how might ultra-processed foods and processed meats fit into this story? There are several pathways, and they converge. First, many ultra-processed foods create metabolic conditions that cancer cells find useful. Rapidly absorbable starches and added sugars can drive repeated insulin spikes. Over time, this can increase insulin resistance and raise levels of insulin and insulin-like growth factors, signals that can promote cell proliferation and reduce apoptosis, which is the self-destruct program your body uses to eliminate damaged cells. Not every rise in blood sugar feeds a tumor directly, but chronic metabolic dysfunction can create fertile ground for abnormal cells to thrive. Cancer loves chaos, and ultra-processed dietary patterns often generate exactly that. Second, these foods can amplify inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the most important threads connecting diet to disease. Many ultra-processed foods are low in fiber and high in refined ingredients that starve beneficial gut bacteria. When you don't feed your microbiome the diverse plant fibers it needs, you produce less of the short-chain fatty acids that help keep your gut lining healthy and your immune system balanced. One of those short-chain fatty acids, butyrate, is especially interesting. Butyrate is made when your gut bacteria ferment fiber. Research has shown that butyrate can help maintain the integrity of the intestinal barrier, calm inflammation, and in the colon, it can even act as a signaling molecule that discourages cancer cell proliferation. Here's what fascinates me about this. You are not only feeding yourself when you eat, you are feeding the microbial community that helps defend you. Now this is where I want you to pay close attention. Your gut barrier is one of the most underappreciated guardians of health. When it is functioning well, it acts like a selective screen, allowing nutrients in while helping keep harmful compounds and inflammatory triggers out. But when the gut environment becomes disturbed, the barrier can weaken. Some ultra-processed foods contain emulsifiers and additives that researchers are actively studying for their effects on the mucus layer and the microbiome. Others crowd out the whole foods that support gut resilience. The result may be increased intestinal permeability, more inflammatory signaling, and an immune system that becomes distracted, dysregulated, or exhausted. In that state, your body is less prepared to recognize and destroy abnormal cells early. And this connects to something even more remarkable: immune health. A landmark science paper in 2018 showed that the gut microbiome can influence how well patients respond to PD-1 cancer immunotherapy. One bacterium that stood out was Akkermansia mucinifila. Patients with more favorable microbiome profiles responded better, and in mouse experiments, adding Akkermansia helped restore responsiveness to therapy. Now, I want to be careful here. This does not mean eating one probiotic food turns on a cancer treatment effect, but it shows you that the microbiome is not a side story. It is part of the cancer story. The healthier and more diverse your gut ecosystem, the better positioned your immune defenses may be. Let me take you one layer deeper into processed meat specifically, because this is where mechanism and epidemiology line up in a concerning way. Processed meats are often cured, smoked, salted, or preserved with compounds that can contribute to the formation of N-nitroso compounds, some of which are carcinogenic. The World Cancer Research Fund also notes that heme iron, found in red and processed meat, can promote the endogenous formation of these compounds and support colorectal tumorigenesis. Then there is the issue of high-temperature cooking. Grilling, charring, and prolonged exposure to high heat can create heterocyclic amines and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, substances linked in experimental models to cancer development. This is not fear-mongering, it is chemistry. What the science reveals is truly extraordinary and also very practical. How food is processed and how food is cooked both matter. There's another piece most people miss. Ultra-processed foods do not just add harmful exposures, they also subtract protection. When packaged industrial foods displace vegetables, legumes, berries, nuts, olive oil, tea, and fermented foods, you lose thousands of beneficial bioactives that your body depends on. That means less support for NRF2, a master cellular defense pathway that helps protect against oxidative stress. Less support for your detoxification enzymes. Less support for beneficial microbial metabolites. Less support for healthy angiogenesis balance. Less support for DNA repair. So the danger is not only what these foods may introduce, it is also what they replace. Every day, your DNA is assaulted by normal metabolism, environmental exposures, and inflammation. Your cells are equipped with repair systems that are astonishingly effective, but they are not invincible. They work best when you give them what they need. Compounds from cruciferous vegetables, berries, tea, herbs, legumes, mushrooms, and olive oil help regulate oxidative stress, inflammation, and cellular signaling in ways that may support DNA protection. In other words, a poor diet does not simply raise risk by adding bad actors. It can also weaken the very repair systems designed to keep abnormal cells under control. So, if you step back and look at the full picture, the phrase faster cancer cell growth starts to make sense. Researchers are not saying a single snack immediately causes cancer. What they are showing is that habitual intake of ultra-processed foods and processed meats may create a body environment in which abnormal cells have more of what they need: more inflammation, poorer microbiome balance, weaker barrier integrity, more proliferative signaling, and fewer natural breaks. That is the real danger. Not a dramatic one-time event, but a quiet shift in biology that accumulates over months and years. But here's where the science gets really interesting. The same biology that can be pushed in a harmful direction can often be nudged back toward protection. This is one of the most exciting areas of medicine right now. Your body is dynamic. It responds. When you improve the quality of your food, your microbiome can begin to shift within days. Inflammatory markers can move. Endothelial function can improve. Protective gene pathways can be activated. You are not trapped by yesterday's meal. What you eat next still matters. So based on this research, here are the foods I want you to focus on if you want to build an anti-growth environment inside your body. The first is cruciferous vegetables, especially broccoli, broccoli sprouts, watercress, bok choy, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, and arugula. These foods contain glucosinolates that can be converted into sulforaphane, a compound that activates NRF2 and helps your cells turn on detoxification and defense enzymes. Johns Hopkins researchers studying broccoli sprout preparations found significant increases in the excretion of airborne toxins, including benzene, and they linked the effect to sulforaphane-driven activation of protective pathways. That is remarkable because it shows food can actually enhance your body's ability to handle toxic exposures. When you cook cruciferous vegetables, keep them lightly cooked rather than obliterated. Overcooking can reduce the enzymes involved in forming sulforaphane. A gentle steam is usually enough. If you're using broccoli sprouts, treat them like a living food. Add them fresh to salads, bowls, or sandwiches. The second food is green tea. Here's what fascinates me about green tea. It is not just a warm beverage. It is a delivery system for catechins, especially EGCG, one of the best studied tea polyphenols in cancer biology. Preclinical studies have shown that EGCG can interfere with angiogenesis, the blood vessel growth tumors need. In one published study, EGCG suppressed breast tumor angiogenesis and growth by reducing HIF-1-alpha, NF-kappa B, and VEGF signaling. Now, I want to be precise. That was not a proof of cure in humans, but it helps explain why green tea continues to attract scientific interest. When you regularly replace sugary beverages with unsweetened green tea, you're not only removing a harmful input, you're adding a potentially protective one. The third food is extra virgin olive oil. This one is especially compelling because it sits at the center of one of the most studied dietary patterns in the world, the Mediterranean diet. In a secondary analysis of the PREDIME trial published in JAMA Internal Medicine, women assigned to a Mediterranean diet supplemented with extra virgin olive oil had a significantly lower risk of invasive breast cancer compared with a control diet. Olive oil is rich in polyphenols that help reduce oxidative stress and inflammation, and research suggests these compounds can influence pathways involved in angiogenesis and cellular signaling. What I like about olive oil is how practical it is. You can use it immediately, swap it in for less healthy fats, drizzle it over vegetables, beans, or cooked fish. Use it to make a meal more satisfying and more biologically active. The fourth group is fiber-rich whole plant foods that feed your microbiome. Beans, lentils, chickpeas, oats, barley, nuts, seeds, onions, garlic, asparagus, leeks, apples, and a wide range of vegetables. The goal here is not perfection. The goal is diversity. Different microbes feed on different fibers, and a more diverse intake helps build a more resilient ecosystem. When your gut microbes ferment these fibers, they produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, acetate, and propionate. Butyrate is especially important in the colon, where it helps support the gut lining and can influence gene expression in ways that may slow malignant behavior. This is the beautiful part. You do not need a futuristic therapy to start changing this biology. A bowl of lentils, a serving of oats, a handful of nuts, or a side of beans can begin participating in that process. The fifth group is fermented foods, including plain yogurt with live cultures, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, and other traditionally fermented foods that you tolerate well. In a Stanford-led dietary intervention, a fermented food-rich diet increased microbiome diversity and lowered multiple markers of inflammation. That matters because inflammation and microbial imbalance often travel together. If your current diet is low in fermented foods, start gently. The point is not to force large amounts. The point is to give your internal ecosystem more beneficial signals and more microbial exposure from real foods. The sixth food is mushrooms, especially varieties like shiitake, maitake, and oyster mushrooms. Mushrooms contain beta-glucans and other compounds that interact with the immune system. A 2021 systematic review and meta-analysis found that higher mushroom consumption was associated with a lower risk of total cancer. Again, association is not the same as a guarantee, but the direction of the evidence is intriguing, and the mechanism is plausible. Mushrooms are not medicine in a fantasy sense. They are food with immune-active compounds. Add them to soups, stir-fries, grain bowls, or omelets. They bring both culinary depth and biological interest. The seventh food is tomatoes, especially cooked tomatoes paired with a healthy fat like olive oil. Cooking helps release lycopene, a carotenoid that has been studied extensively in relation to oxidative stress and prostate health. Tomatoes also provide a package of compounds beyond lycopene, and when you combine them with olive oil, absorption improves. This is one reason traditional food cultures often get the biology right before the science fully catches up. Tomato sauce over beans or vegetables, or a simple cooked tomato base with olive oil, garlic, and herbs can be far more powerful than it looks. The eighth group is berries. Blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, and cranberries contain anthocyanins, ellagic acid, and other polyphenols that may help reduce oxidative stress and inflammatory signaling. Berries also provide fiber, which means they are doing double duty. They can nourish your microbes while delivering compounds that interact with your cells directly. Choose whole berries over sugary fruit products whenever possible. The less interference from added sugars and refined fillers, the more your body gets the benefit of the food itself. The ninth food is fatty fish, such as salmon, sardines, and mackerel. These provide omega-3 fats, including EPA and DHA, which have been studied for anti-inflammatory effects. If your diet is dominated by ultra-processed foods, restoring healthy fats becomes important because membrane function, inflammatory signaling, and immune communication all depend on the kinds of fats you regularly consume. Pairing fish with vegetables, beans, and olive oil creates a meal pattern that is almost the mirror image of the ultra-processed pattern associated with harm. The 10th category is allium vegetables like garlic and onions. These are kitchen staples, but they are also rich in sulfur-containing compounds and prebiotic fibers that support the microbiome. Garlic, onions, leeks, and shallots help build flavor without needing ultra-processed sauces and additives. That may seem simple, but from a practical standpoint, it matters. The more you can make real food delicious, the less you depend on industrial convenience foods. Now, if you're wondering what this looks like on a real plate, let me make it simple. Instead of a breakfast built around processed meat and refined starch, imagine plain yogurt or kefir with berries and walnuts, or steel-cut oats with ground flax and fruit. Instead of a lunch based on packaged deli meat, think lentils, olive oil, vegetables, mushrooms, and a fermented side. Instead of dinner centered on charred processed meat, think salmon with broccoli and tomatoes, or a bean and vegetable stew with extra virgin olive oil and herbs. You do not need a perfect diet to shift your biology. You need a repeated pattern that moves in the right direction. And here's something else I want you to hear clearly. This is not about shame. It is not about purity. It is not about believing one food is poison and another is magical. The human body is resilient. One meal does not define your fate. But consistency matters. If ultra-processed foods and processed meats are showing up day after day, crowding out the foods that nourish your defense systems, the biology begins to add up. The same is true in the protective direction. A little more broccoli, a little more olive oil, more beans, more berries, more mushrooms, more fermented foods, less industrial convenience. Over time, that adds up too. Now I promised you a big reveal, and here it is. The most important food researchers are now linking to faster cancer cell growth is not a single exotic ingredient hiding in the shadows. It is the ultra-processed food pattern itself, with processed meat standing out as one of the clearest red flags. That's the breakthrough most people miss. We spend so much time searching for one miracle superfood that we overlook the dominant driver sitting in plain sight, the everyday industrial food environment. The science is showing us something remarkable. You may not need to obsess over obscure compounds nearly as much as you need to reduce the foods that distort your body's defense systems in the first place. In other words, the biggest win may come from subtraction before addition. And the kitchen swap I told you I would share is this. Replace one ultra-processed meal each day with a defense system meal. That means one meal built from real ingredients that support your microbiome, reduce inflammatory load, and deliver protective bioactives. It could be as simple as beans, greens, olive oil, tomatoes, and mushrooms. It could be yogurt, berries, and nuts. It could be fish with cruciferous vegetables. It could be tofu, bok choy, ginger, garlic, and brown rice. Keep it realistic. Keep it repeatable. If you do that consistently, you are no longer just eating. You are instructing your biology. What I find most exciting about this research is that it puts meaningful power back in your hands without drifting into false promises. Food is not a substitute for medical care, screening, diagnosis, or treatment. But food is one of the tools your body uses to defend itself every day. That is real, that is measurable, and that is hopeful. When you understand angiogenesis, the microbiome, DNA protection, inflammation, and immunity, the plate in front of you begins to look very different. It stops being just breakfast, lunch, or dinner. It becomes information. It becomes instruction. It becomes an opportunity to eat in a way that may help your body do what it was designed to do, protect you. So the next time you reach for a packaged meal, a processed meat sandwich, or a heavily engineered snack, pause for one moment and ask a better question. Not just, does this taste good, but what is this teaching my body to do? Is it helping create resilience, or is it quietly feeding vulnerability? That single question can change the way you shop, cook, and eat for the rest of your life. If you found this helpful, share it with someone you care about, because the science of food as medicine is one of the most important conversations in modern health. And if you want to go deeper, keep exploring the connection between your microbiome, angiogenesis, and the foods that activate your natural defense systems. The more you understand the biology, the more empowered you become. Your body has an extraordinary capacity to defend and repair itself when you give it the right tools, and your next meal is one chance to begin.